Thanks for checking out this video where I'll be talking about the 5 greatest San Diego Chargers players of all time. If you've missed the video about your team, again, I'm doing it in alphabetical order so you can kind of see where I'm at. Don't have much more to go. I've got a lot of this series done for the month of June. Check out the playlist in the description box down below. I'll put a couple of articles from my work at profootballspot.com about the Chicago Bears in the description box down below. I'd love it if you check it out and give me some feedback on my work there. Okay, anyways, got that out of the way. Let's talk about the 5 greatest San Diego Chargers players of all time. And this is an organization that dates back to the AFL. They were a charter member of the American Football League. And the Chargers were one of those teams in the 60s under Sid Gilman that really helped change the game of pro football because the AFL as a league was a little more wide open. The AFL as a league was a little bit better at integrating as opposed to the NFL. And the Chargers definitely fit into that mold, especially from the standpoint of opening up the game of football with their passing attack, with that West Coast offense. And, it's something that you've seen throughout the years. There have been some really good Chargers offenses over the years. Defenses, not so much. So it shouldn't be all of that surprising that 4 out of the 5 players on this top 5 San Diego Chargers list are on the offensive side of the ball. There is one defensive player on there that I almost felt bad about putting him at number 2 on the list, but we'll talk about that in a moment. So anyways, let's get started with this list. Number 5, I will go with the original, the real, the great Kellen Winslow, who was a tight end that really changed the game because where you had the tight ends like the Mike Ditka and the John Mackeys of the world, the Dave Caspers, Jackie Smiths, the Charlie Sanders, you had some great tight ends, but boy, Kellen Winslow was something different. This was a guy that was really a big wide receiver. This guy had elite speed. He could jump out of the gym or out of the stadium, so to speak. Incredible hands. Kellen Winslow changed the game in the terms of not only could tight ends be threats on the offensive side of the ball, they could be your primary explosive weapon on the offensive side of the ball that you build your entire passing game around. Kellen Winslow was a first-round pick out of Missouri in the 1979 NFL Draft. Part of the tragedy about his career is that he only played 9 seasons because he had an injury and his career prematurely. But he made it count. He was a 5-time Pro Bowler, 3-time All-Pro, 2-time league leader in receptions, and that's, again, as a tight end. He had 3 seasons with 1,000 or more receiving yards, again, as a tight end, when tight ends at the time didn't get a whole lot of opportunities to catch the ball. He was a member of the 1980s NFL All-Decade team. He was a part of some good Chargers teams that had a run of 4 straight years in the playoffs in the late 70s and early 80s. Kellen Winslow, one of the great Chargers of all time. Number 4 was the quarterback that threw to him on those teams, and that was Dan Fouts, a 3rd-round pick out of Oregon in the 1973 NFL Draft. Now, he was a guy that initially he really scuffled and he really struggled, and it really took him some time to grab a foothold. Obviously, with Coryell, when he came in and you started the Air Coryell offense, that's when Dan Fouts' career, in my opinion, really took off. He played 15 seasons for the San Diego Chargers. He was a 6-time Pro Bowler, a 2-time All-Pro, led him to 4 playoff appearances in 4 consecutive years. He was a 4-time league leader in passing yards, and he ended up going on to setting several single-season passing records and end up being a first ballot Pro Football Hall of Famer, one of the great Chargers of all time. Still the organization's career all-time leader in passing yardage, even with all the throwing of the ball that Philip Rivers does. Number 3, the best Charger of the 2000s, and that, of course, is LaDainian Tomlinson, one of those rare players in the recent times of the NFL, a running back that should be, beyond a shadow of a doubt, a first ballot Hall of Famer. The great thing about LaDainian Tomlinson was the Chargers made a huge gamble at the time, and they really rolled the dice. They had that number 1 overall pick in 2001's draft, and everybody thought that Michael Vick should have been the number 1 pick. The Chargers traded back, said we can get freaking LT at number 5 and Drew Brees maybe at the beginning of the 2nd round, and we'd rather have that over Michael Vick. Well, you would rather just have LaDainian Tomlinson over Michael Vick. Throwing Drew Brees in there is something entirely different. LaDainian Tomlinson, one of the great all-around running backs of his time and arguably of all time. During his 9 seasons with the Chargers, he was a 5-time Pro Bowler. He was a 3-time All-Pro. He clearly was, to me, the franchise player for the San Diego Chargers. Everything they did on the offensive side of the ball was built around LaDainian Tomlinson. Everything you had to do defensively against the San Diego Chargers was geared towards stopping LaDainian Tomlinson. He was a 3-time league leader in rushing touchdowns, a 2-time league leader in rushing yards. He was the 2006 NFL Most Valuable Player when he had one of the greatest seasons a running back could possibly have, scoring the NFL record combined 31 touchdowns. He was dominant. The running back on the 2000s NFL All-Decade team. His totals with the Chargers, and again, this is just with the Chargers. I'm not counting his 2 years at the end of his career with the Jets. Just his numbers from the Chargers alone rank him in the top 10 all-time in yards from scrimmage, 8th all-time in rushing yards, 2nd all-time in rushing touchdowns. Again, one of the truly great running backs in the history of the National Football League that a lot of us can feel very fortunate and lucky to have said that we were able to watch his entire career. And he ends up number 3 on this list. Number 2, though, my favorite San Diego Charger of all time is Junior Seau, the 5th overall pick out of USC in the 1990 NFL Draft. To me, Junior Seau was arguably, and I say this arguably, the preeminent defensive player in the 1990s. And I'm sure I'm going to get counters about Reggie White, and I'm sure I'm going to get counters with Bruce Smith, and I'm going to get counters from this and this. But damn it all, I saw the type of impact that a Junior Seau could have on a defense and on a football team. You name me 5 to 7 starters, even you knowledgeable football fans, without having to look it up, name 5 to 7 starters off of that 94 Chargers team that won the AFC Championship and went on to face the 49ers in the Super Bowl. Good luck to you. I know I can, but I'm a whole different degree of stat nerd. But you know who Junior Seau is, or you damn sure better know who he is. During his 13 seasons with the Chargers, he was a Pro Bowler in all but one of those seasons. He was a 6-time All-Pro. He was, to me, the preeminent outside linebacker of his time, a member of the 1990s NFL All-Decade team, and in my opinion, come next year, should be a slam dunk choice, no doubt about it, first ballot inductee into the Pro Football Hall of Fame. One of the truly great defensive players that I feel blessed and fortunate to have been able to watch throughout his entire career in the National Football League. Junior Seau was special. And I think sometimes if he would have played for a 49ers team or a Cowboys team or a Steelers team, I bet on some of those Super Bowl championship teams, we'd be talking about Junior Seau perhaps being one of the 10 greatest players in NFL history. That's how good this guy was. That's how dominant this guy was, in my humble opinion. But with all that being said, he's still not the greatest San Diego Charger of all time. That honor goes, to me, clearly to Lance Alworth. Lance Alworth spent 9 seasons during the Chargers' AFL years with the Chargers from 62 to 70. And he was the preeminent wide receiver, in my opinion, in professional football, AFL or NFL, doesn't matter, during that time. 9 seasons, 7 times he was an AFL All-Star, 6 times he was an AFL/NFL All-Pro. You're talking about a guy that was a 3-time league leader in receiving yards and touchdowns. You're talking about a guy that in the 60s, again, keep in mind the times, the 60s, and even with Gilman's aired out offense, that West Coast offense where they threw the ball more as an extension of the running game, it was still rare to have a receiver put up a 1,000-yard season. Lance Alworth, Bambi as he was called, with that long kind of flowing gait, did it in 7 consecutive seasons. 7 straight years of 1,000 or more receiving yards at a time where you're only playing 14 games a season when 1,000-yard seasons really meant something. He did it for 7 consecutive seasons. He was the 1963 AFL Player of the Year, He was voted to the all-time AFL team, and no great surprise there. He's the only primarily AFL player to make it to the NFL's 75th anniversary team that was announced in 1994. And he was the first ever player that played primarily his career in the AFL that was inducted into the Pro Football Hall of Fame in Canton, Ohio. And that happened in 1978. And not only that, he was a first ballot Hall of Famer. First ballot. First ever AFL player to make it to the Hall of Fame. That should tell you something. That should tell you how special Bambi was. That should tell you how dominant Lance Alworth was in his time. For a Pro Football Hall of Fame that had a clear bias, and I still think to this day does, towards the AFL to differing levels of degree. They thought enough of Lance Alworth and respected Lance Alworth enough and his dominance and his contributions to the game of pro football that even they couldn't deny him. They put him in right away, and he was the first AFL player. So they're arguably the greatest player in the history of the American Football League. He was the first Hall of Famer from that league. To me, he's the greatest San Diego Charger of all time. You are welcome, Chase Oliver, all of you that are Chargers fans. Let me know what you think of my list. You are more than welcome to give me your list as well. Got a few more teams to get through, and then I'll be all done with this series, and I'll be happy to move on to other things.